6 New Orleans Saints players that you should be watching during tonight's preseason action against the Houston Texans. We got all of that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? Welcome into another live Saturday episode this time of Locked On Saints, your daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much, as always, making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget that we're free and available on all podcast apps and on YouTube as well. And I'm your host, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter, your New Orleans Saints expert, credentialed member of the media, USA Today's Saints Wire, CrescentCitySports.com. Of course, Tuesdays on Locked On NFL, and here with you every single Monday through Friday on Locked On Saints. And I see already the Your Team Every Days in the chat, Ladarian, Jerry, appreciate y'all very much for being here in the building. I appreciate y'all for joining us for kind of a surprise Saturday live episode, which will, of course, be posted later on YouTube and every podcast app as well. Today, we're taking a look at 6 New Orleans Saints that you should be watching in tonight's preseason action. And, of course, as always, promised a little bit of lagniappe at the end as well. So today's kind of a little bit of a kickback episode. I kind of want to just highlight these guys in groups, kind of in pairs. These are just 6 players for me that I'm going to be watching, and I'm leaving some guys out. And I'm kind of doing that on purpose because I've talked about them a bunch. That doesn't mean that you don't want to hear about them, though. So guys like Kirk Merritt, guys like Dejon Dixon, the local prospects, Dejon Dixon, Edna Carr, Nicholls State, now with the New Orleans Saints, big 6'4", 200+ pound wide receiver. Obviously, you're going to want to watch big number 84 out on the field. Number 85, Kirk Merritt, the Destrehan native, a lot of speed, 4.4 speed. Has somebody else that has jumped off the field so far throughout training camp. Obviously, we're going to be watching those guys, but I kind of wanted to dig into a couple of other players that I maybe haven't talked about as much or have talked about, but not necessarily enough. So these are the guys that I want to highlight going into tonight's game against the Houston Texans. So we'll start off with a pair of undrafted free agents that I know you're going to be very interested in. We'll jump then to some veteran players that are looking to either revitalize their careers or make their next move and land a spot. And then we'll wrap up with some of the most intriguing players, 2 of the most intriguing players you're going to see out on the field. And then we'll wrap up with that lagniappe. So let's get to those undrafted free agents that I know that you love. Abram Smith, former Baylor running back, undrafted free agent rookie coming in this year, and Lucas Krull, not Nick, Lucas Krull, the Pittsburgh tight end that has come in to a pretty crowded, maybe a little bit better than we thought tight end room so far in terms of what we've seen in training camp. But both these guys have real opportunities to make the roster. Abram Smith, the running back, you're going to be watching. That's number 33. Lucas Krull, the tight end, you'll be watching. That's number 44. Let's break down each of these guys individually. When it comes to Abram Smith, some of y'all know this story, maybe some of you don't. Played linebacker for the first 2 years at Baylor, not because he wanted to, but because Baylor was that thin at linebacker on the roster. Then he finally got his 1 year at his natural position of running back, goes off for 257 carries, 1,601 yards, and 12 rushing touchdowns. And he has a real opportunity with the New Orleans Saints, who have had a very open and clear competition for the running back behind Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram. We also don't know, are they only going to keep 3 running backs, or is there the possibility that they keep 4, even if they keep Adam Prentice, the fullback, which I hope that they do because I love keeping the fullback alive and well when it comes to the NFL. So Abram Smith has some opportunity here. He's somebody that is a very good runner. He's got good vision. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can run some routes. He's a good pass protector or a willing pass protector, things like that. But can you do all of that at the NFL level, at the NFL speed? We're going to learn a lot of that tonight. The big thing about this Houston Texans game tonight is going to be tackling or getting tackled. And that goes exponentially. I mean, that's remarkably true for the running backs, right? Abram Smith, can you take a hit without putting the ball on the ground, right? So those are going to be the things to keep an eye out on all throughout. As for Lucas Kroll, big number 44, 6'6", 6'5", 250 plus pounds, but moves like a much lighter receiver. Does a good job at finding holes in zones, particularly when he's crossing the field, kind of running those over routes or crossers that the Saints love to run with their tight ends, love to run with their big receivers. Just an easy target to hit as they get to the sideline. You know what I mean? So when it comes to Lucas Kroll, what are you looking for? You're looking to see what he's going to be able to do as a run blocker in the run game, as a pass blocker in the passing game, and then, of course, making sure that he's able to give you all of that pass-catching acuity that you expect from him at game speed, right? And in-game situations. How are the hands? How's the movement? What's it like going up, watching him go up against defenders that he's not now a little bit more accustomed or used to going up against like he is with the friendly guys at practice, right? And at the same time, him too, what's it like to take a hit, right? So those are going to be the things that you're watching when it comes to Lucas Kroll and Abram Smith. Both of these guys, as undrafted free agent rookies, have real opportunity, right? Oh, I didn't talk about the opportunity for Lucas. So Lucas basically is finding his way, Lucas Kroll, into a tight end room that stars Adam Troutman and Taysom Hill and Juwan Johnson, but the Saints will sometimes keep 4 tight ends. They'll sometimes keep 3 tight ends. So if they keep a 4th one, does Lucas Kroll push another guy out like Nick Vanette, for instance? Or does he end up on the practice squad? In any case, he'll very likely see some snaps and see some opportunities in 2022. There's no doubt about that. But you're still trying to make sure that you're putting out the best tape possible, not only for your opportunities with the team for these 2 guys, but potentially even a little bit of an audition for the 31 other teams that are going to be watching film and looking for players to fill in at certain positions. If they end up not getting claimed off of waivers, if they get cut or if they get waived, then they end up on the New Orleans Saints practice squad. I think both of those guys would be absolute shoo-ins there. But their goal, fighting for a spot in the 53-man roster. Special teams could be another way for them to do that as well, but seeing what they can do at their natural positions tonight is going to be very, very interesting. Now, let's get to some of the veterans that aren't necessarily on the bubble, but at least looking to land a more permanent spot. 2 guys, including one who's basically trying to revitalize his career and has done a very good job of it so far throughout training camp. Can he continue under the lights? We'll get to that as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. Thanks again to our friends over at BetOnline who helped to make it all happen. So if you're looking for getting in on some sports wagering for the preseason, you're like myself and you're kind of a sicko, you can do that. Right now, the line has moved to the Houston Texans being favored. I think it's just because a lot of people might have just been betting on the other side of that. I think the Saints were originally like -1. Now the Texans are -2. And so I think that probably shifted the line, seeing where the money went, and then that big swing on game day. Those happen all the time. So if you want to get on that, you can check them out over at BetOnline. You can also get in on the Saints at 7.5 for the over-under for their win total, 8.5 or 9.5 for the win total. So there's a lot of alternative lines that you can get into as well, alternate lines that you can get into as well. So go and check out all of that, as well as much more around the NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, esports, combat sports, golf, pickleball probably eventually. I mean, they've got everything over at BetOnline. So go and check them out today. It's over at BetOnline where the game starts. All right, family, continuing on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. I see y'all in the chat. Wesley, Chemo with the Your Team every day. Appreciate y'all very much. So for today, we're just going through 6 players that we're going to be watching closely in tonight's preseason opener and matchup against the Houston Texans. Thanks as always for making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day. So let's dive in we talked about the undrafted free agent rookies. Now let's get into a couple of the veterans here that could be looking for their next stop. And there's 2 that have one of which has a pretty direct line to the roster. The other one is in a pretty crowded room. So we'll have to see how it all pans out. But the preseason game here against the Houston Texans kind of gets them both started out on the right foot. So we're talking interior defensive lineman Cantavia Street, formerly the San Francisco 49ers, who broke all of Drew Brees' ribs a few years ago, and then safety Justin Evans, formerly of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Let's start off with Evans because his story is really intriguing, right? Had some injuries, lower leg injuries, both feet, lots of stuff going on. You know, I get a little queasy, get a little weird when I talk about injuries, but you know, he had injuries in like both ankles or both feet. Ended up staying out of the NFL for a little while, and then coming back to the NFL and finding an opportunity with the New Orleans Saints. And just a really good story of like perseverance, patience, and kind of wherewithal, self-awareness, right? I'm going to take some time. I'm going to get right away from the game of football, and then I'm going to come back and see who's willing to give me an opportunity. And the New Orleans Saints were that team giving Justin Evans an opportunity. He was a very talented player at Texas A&M, very talented player as well with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he's showing you throughout training camp, throughout practices, that he's a talented player as well. But what did Allen Iverson say? We talk about practice, not a game. Practice. So now we get into a game and we get an opportunity to see Justin Evans. He'll be wearing number 30 in tonight's game, which, by the way, the Saints are wearing white and gold today, gold pants today. With Justin Evans, who has had several interceptions throughout camp, lots of pass breakups, good, really, really good in the run game, fantastic when it comes to run fits, and we already know he's a big hitter. I mean, this guy used to put Derrick Henry on his back when they would play in the SEC. Like, this is the real deal when it comes to Justin Evans. Now you just need to see if he's going to be able to put all of that together when it comes to the game, right? Game speed, game situations. It's kind of like what Dennis Allen told us on Thursday. He said basically that, look, practice and the preseason games are both very important. But at the end of the day, the game of football is about what? Results. It's about results. And he clarified further that it's about results in game situations. So this is going to be a really, really important opportunity here for Justin Evans, who's looking to effectively revitalize everything that he's got going on in terms of his career and what's moving forward for him. The next thing to watch, looks like we're having some connectivity issues, y'all. Sorry. Hopefully this will get fixed up here in a little bit. But the next play that we're going to be watching in terms of veteran players is going to be Cantavia Street. The interior defensive lineman has a spot and a role that he's going to be able to find on that interior defensive line. He's going to be competing almost directly with Shy Tuttle, who's kind of the written in pencil incumbent starter next to David Onyemata. And we know David Onyemata is somebody that we can pick as a potential breakout candidate, right? Taking a big leap from that 2021 year of production where he missed the first 6 games, took a little bit of time to get into rhythm, all that, and then jumping into 2023. But who's going to be the guy next to him? And we can pencil in Shy Tuttle all we want, but Cantavia Street has looked really good in practice so far. So he's going to be another one to really keep an eye out on. I've talked about it before that his play style jumps off the screen a little bit or jumps off the field a little bit because it's unique and it's different than what we're used to seeing on the Saints defensive line. We're used to seeing those big power guys that can push offensive linemen into the laps of their quarterbacks or the opposing quarterbacks. Cantavia Street has a little bit more of kind of a quick twitch kind of athletic brand of defensive interior linemen or interior defensive linemen that I think is really, really interesting and is something that has proven to be effective so far throughout camp. Can it be effective in game now? Now, Cantavia Street, you'll be watching him. People were in a nice number. We're in number 69, so you'll see that. And of course, you're going to be keeping an eye on 30 when it comes to Justin Evans. But those are 2 veterans that you're going to want to keep an eye out on in this game. And there are others too. I mean, like, I can throw in another veteran here that's kind of a second-year veteran. Ian Book, right? Ian Book, he had 24 total snaps in the preseason last year. He should have more than that tonight against the Houston Texans. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of opportunity here for some of these other guys, young veterans, older veterans, all of that, to continue to sort of find their way not only within the NFL, but find their way with the New Orleans Saints. Looks like our connection is a lot better now. Thanks y'all for the patience there. So as we watch these guys, those are going to be some numbers. Those are going to be some players to keep an eye out on the veteran side. But there are also some guys that are just straight up intriguing, right? That you're looking forward to seeing them out on the field. There are a lot of storylines around a couple of these guys, and they're the ones that I would consider the most intriguing. Nice number 69, I told you. The most intriguing when it comes to players you're going to be watching tonight. So we're going to get to that as we continue on and wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. We are wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Saints with 2 of the most intriguing players that you're going to be watching in tonight's preseason matchup against the Houston Texans. Thanks again, everybody, for being here for the live show. Don't forget to drop that your team every day. I'll try to grab a couple of questions as well as we get toward the end, but we're going to kind of push this one toward, pretty tight in terms of time here, so I might not be able to do it, but you know how it goes. I'll always try to come back to them at another time, so don't worry if I don't get to those. The next, I can't help it. So the next piece here and sorry, when I said I can't help it, I'm referring to some more things in the chat about Cantavia Street's number. A lot of people are excited about Cantavia Street's number, and I understand. It's okay. We're all on the internet here. So the next piece here is kind of the most intriguing pair of players out of the six, or two of the most intriguing players in this pair out of our six. And those are Trevor Penning, rookie left tackle. He'll be wearing number 70. And then, of course, Divina Zigbo, number 28. And I know I'm kind of cheating a little bit because I already mentioned a running back in Abram Smith, but Divina Zigbo has been the most consistent running back so far, not named Alvin Kamara or Mark Ingram throughout camp, in my opinion, right? Some people might see it a little bit different, all of that. So for me, when you look at Divina Zigbo, what you're looking for is somebody that's going to be able to hit holes, that's going to have good vision, that's going to be able to contribute in the passing game. Want to see how he does as a run blocker and then, or as a pass protector. And then the next piece of it is, again, what happens when you take contact for the first time? The Saints might practice in pads, but they're not live. They're not taking hits. They're not bringing people to the ground. Now is the first time you really get the opportunity to work on that. You're tackling pads, you're tackling dummies, things like that to work on the fundamentals. And you're working on, trainers trying to hit the ball out of your hands and stuff like that with like these big like yellow pool noodle things. But until you really get hit, you don't really know, right? You don't really know. So you're waiting to see what's going to happen there. Does he put the ball on the ground? How safe can he protect the ball? The guy has humongous arms. Like we were watching and it looks like he has like a forearm and a football holding the football. That's how big his biceps are. It's absolutely insane. So he's a strong guy who should be able to lock up the football and not have any issues with that, but you want to see that out on the field. Then you want to be able to see what he's going to be able to do in terms of contributing in the run game at NFL speed with all these guys. Look, Divina Zigbo is a veteran, right? He was on the team last year, caught some passes in Seattle. He came into the New Orleans Saints as an undrafted free agent years ago after graduating and going undrafted from the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Shout out Amy Just, who's over there covering the Cornhuskers now. So there's a lot of those different pieces that you can, put together for Divina Zigbo, and those are all kind of like skins on the wall for him, right? So you're looking at where he fits in now with the scheme as it is today and what he looks like now in full game action. But he has been, in my opinion, the most consistent running back behind Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram so far. So to me, that makes him very intriguing going into tonight's matchup. Trevor Penning, he's intriguing, right? He's intriguing for a couple of different reasons. I know a lot of people are going to want to talk about whether or not he's going to get into a fight and things like that. But beyond that, this is a guy that was drafted in the first round, that has started playing offensive line while he was in college at University of Northern Iowa after converting over from a tight end. He's got a mean streak. He's one of those types of guys that is going to be able to like really lead with a bit of an example in terms of the aggression, tenacity, all of that of his play. Does all that come out? Does he pull back a little bit in the NFL because he's worried about the penalties, things like that? Because you kind of want that aggression, right? Like you want that part of the game, particularly when you're talking about a guy that's going to be your potential starting left tackle of your future. That guy's got to be mean. He mentioned, and he told us in a presser a couple of days ago, that like if the guy across from you hates you, then you're doing your job. And so that's Trevor Penning's attitude. So now we get a real opportunity to see him go up against guys that he's not familiar with anymore. He mentioned to us that Peyton Turner, Taco Charlton, he kind of knows what those guys do now. So now he's going to be going up against these Houston Texans defensive linemen, which, let's be real, in terms of the grand scheme of things, they're not Von Millers, they're not Aaron Donalds, they're not, they're not these elite edge rushers. They're not Cam Jordan and Peyton Turner and stuff like that. Like they're not these elite guys, but they're a different breed. They're a different style of play. They're a little bit more speed rush-y. So one of the things that we saw early on in camp was Trevor Penning struggling with speed moves to his inside shoulder, his right shoulder, because he's lining up at left tackle. Does he get past that? How has that grown? Has he gotten better there? How has he improved? How does he match up against this brand of pass rusher versus the brand of pass rusher, which are the bigger, more powerful guys that you see in New Orleans, right? That focus a little bit more on power. So that's going to be a big piece that you're watching. And I think, too, the battle between James Hurst and Trevor Penning might be a little bit tighter than we expected at this point. Does the preseason allow him to help him continue to close that gap? Or does the preseason open the gap back up because of the lack of familiarity of opponent, right? So those are going to be the two players that I think are going to be amongst the most intriguing to watch, right? Obviously, there are going to be multiple intriguing guys to watch. Okay, I want to get to our lagniappe now. So here we go. We're going to switch this over, and we're going to jump into today's lagniappe. Today's lagniappe is a quick reminder to you, okay? Preseason is about individual evaluation, not team success. So if the team goes out there and scores 60 points in the preseason opener, not going to happen, but if something like that happens, don't get too excited about team success and what it means for the Saints in 2022. On the flip side, and instead, what you should do is celebrate the individual performances that allow that to happen, right? You get a 30-plus scoring day, a 24-plus scoring day. Heck, you get a 21-plus scoring day in the preseason. Really, really good. Celebrate the individual players that make the plays that allow that to happen, right? The contributors, not the team, and don't get too bought in to what you're seeing in the preseason from a team perspective. On the other side of that, if the team loses tonight, or if the team struggles tonight, that does not mean that this team will lose or struggle all throughout the 2022 season. It's individual evaluation. It's not about team success. That doesn't mean that this team doesn't want to win, right? This is a winning culture. They want to win every game that they play. If they scrimmaged, they want to win the scrimmage. If they're playing in the preseason, these exhibition matchups that don't actually count towards the regular season, they want to win those exhibition matchups that don't count toward the regular season. They want to win those regular season games. They, of course, want to win the postseason games, all of that, right? This is a team that wants to win. There's no doubt about that. But if it doesn't happen in the preseason, if they don't go and do what the Baltimore Ravens have done over the last 20 or 21 games or whatever, not a big deal. Really, really not a big deal. It's A-okay, right? So just remember to kind of celebrate the individual successes that you see from some of these players. Don't get too bogged down one way or another, positive or negative, about how the team itself performs based upon what you see, or how the team itself projects into 2022 based upon what you see in the opening preseason matchup. So just be careful about that kind of thing. We're all excited about the fact that football is back, right? Everyone's excited about that. We're excited that Saints football is back 100%. Don't let it get too out of control for you, though. All right, I want to go to one question real quick. I want to Tomas here, who asks, how do you see backup interior offensive line as of now? Here's what I'll say, and the reason why I wanted to come back to this question is because I think there's something unique about the way that the New Orleans Saints have built out their interior offensive line, or built out their offensive line in terms of depth this year. Remember in years past, if one player gets hurt, that usually impacts two positions, right? Let's say, let's just look at last year, right? Early last year, Eric McCoy gets hurt. There's not really a backup center on the roster in 2021. So Cesar Ruiz moves from right guard to center. James Hurst plugs in at right guard. So you have one player playing out of position and another player that's a backup. So you've effectively impacted two positions with an injury at one position. What I like about what the New Orleans Saints have done so far this offseason is that they have guys like Nick Martin, like Forrest Lamp, who can also play center, right? And Nick Martin almost only plays center. You have Forrest Lamp, who can play at center. You've got Cesar Ruiz, who can play at center. But then you also have on the same roster guys like Calvin Throckmorton and Forrest Lamp, who can play on the interior. James Hurst, who can play outside and on the interior. And then you have your guys that can specialize at tackle as well. If James Hurst is the starter, you've got Trevor Penning as a great backup at left tackle. You've got Landon Young as a great backup at right tackle. If Trevor Penning is starting, then you've got James Hurst, who's a great backup at left tackle. So that means that if any of your five starters has to go off for a play to tie a shoe or put a helmet back on, you're not shuffling around offensive linemen. Right now, the New Orleans Saints would have dedicated backups to each position on the offensive line, which is really, really important. And as much as we love the idea of guys being able to play multiple positions, which they all can, the guys that don't start, they all can. And many of the guys that do start can play multiple positions too. But I love that the versatility is something that they'll be able to take advantage of because they want to, not something that they'll need to utilize because they don't have any other choice. That's what I like about the New Orleans Saints interior offensive line depth, but also as a whole, the offensive line depth going into this year. Great question, Tomas. I appreciate y'all very much for joining us here for another episode of Locked On Saints. Tonight we'll be back up. I don't know if I'm going to do live or pre-recorded, but I'll get you another episode right after the preseason game, kind of bringing you the big highlights, the big things that you need to know, and looking ahead. Because remember, after this game, going into next week, the Saints have to cut 5 players. They have to go from 90 to 85 on the roster. So who are some of those guys that could potentially be in trouble? But also, who are the guys that stood up, right? We'll kind of do like a stock report. We'll take a look at the guys that that are trending up and the guys that are potentially trending down as well. So we'll break all of that down for you with another episode tonight, kind of going into Sunday, and then we'll get right back to everything as we usually do going into Monday. Remember, the Saints don't practice Sunday or Monday, but I'll be in Green Bay, and we'll get back to our two-a-days Tuesday and Wednesday for those two practices. All right, y'all. Thank you very much for joining us here for a live show. Thank you very much for catching us later as well. For your second listen today, make sure you're going to check out Locked On Fantasy Football, Locked On Dynasty Football. Get ready for all of your fantasy football drafts, less than 30 minutes with the experts, the guys that know what they're talking about. So go and check them out. As I appreciate all of y'all so much for making me a part of your day, a part of your routine, coming through for the surprise live stream, saying yes to the show, saying yes to me. I can't express how much I appreciate you. For everything else that you need in between these episodes on your New Orleans Saints, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation. I'll holla at you.